We're still here with Nicolas Fursley, who's with us. Do you see the EU's latest Google fine as legitimate, legitimate antitrust measure, or is this playing politics?
Very good question. Very good question. Very complicated question. So personally, I don't think it's a good antitrust measure, and the timing of it is annoying, to say the least. It's annoying both, of course, to the Americans, but also to the Europeans themselves. What do I mean by that? Is like, the time of politics. So when I say politics, I mean Ursula von der Leyen, really, because, France is diminished. Under Macron, France's influence in Brussels has diminished a lot. It has to do with the fact that there's a rapid economic decline of France. And so the French have very little influence in Brussels behind the bravado and bluster of Macron, who thinks he can influence the outcome of the Ukraine war or the Martian war or the whatever Jupiter war. In reality, back home in France and Belgium, Paris's power is shrinking. So in that context of shrinking power in Berlin and Paris, there is a dominance of the EU Commission in Brussels. So Ursula von der Leyen is stronger than ever. So what happened at the very end of July, 6 weeks ago, when they had the Aberdeen summit in Scotland at Trump's golf course, after a full day of negotiations, basically Ursula von der Leyen, she yielded to Trump. So that day will remain in infamy in European history, because that 15%, she agreed, speaking in the name of France and Germany.
Yeah,
and the
European leaders were not happy at all in that, right?
No, she overstepped. So there is also a constitutional gray zone, but profiting from the feebleness of Germany and France and their incompetence, quite frankly, she overreached, and she said, I'm speaking in the name of Europe. I bow to you, Donald. So she agreed to two things: a 15% tax. She agreed to that, one-way tax. So she said Europe would not retaliate. So they would take a slap on the face.
This is the tariffs, yeah.
15% tariff on European goods and services exported to America. And she also, speaking in the name of European private sector companies, agreed in the next 3-4 years that industrial giants from Milan, Paris, Frankfurt, Düsseldorf, they would invest billions of dollars every year in new factories in Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, not in France and Germany, Italy, which is really crazy. She agreed to all that. And here, she sugarcoated the Aberdeen disaster by saying, yeah, in reality, it's true that we had a big, America had a big trade deficit with Europe. So if we agree to pay that 15% punitive import duty.
So are you saying that this is sort of like a payback then for her mistakes?
Partly, and also because the political time of von der Leyen is not the same as the time it takes lawyers, government lawyers and government economists and anti-competition, antitrust lawyers in Brussels. Yes, they work for the EU bureaucracy. It's true,
okay.
But Ursula cannot give them orders like a dictator or emperor. And they take 5, 6, 7 months to come to the conclusion.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you something though, Nick, because I want to get through a few things with you. You say that the Google fine is probably not, in your view, legitimate antitrust. What exactly is it that they're fining them for? Is it Google's monopoly with adverts, how they advertise on Google? What is exactly the problem?
I think they're accusing Google of a dominant position, not only in its core business, which is search engines, right? They're accusing Google of using the power of its domination of the search engine industry to dominate even more another industry, which is online advertising. So they're saying, yes, you're very good at search engine. You gather data from clients and you use them in a very monopolistic way, or in a quasi-monopolistic way.
So these are the little ads that come up when you make a Google search. There are certain adverts, aren't they, first in the search? Is that what they're talking about? They shouldn't be doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it an ad exchange competitive advantage. Once again, it's a gray zone. So it's a gray zone. It's difficult to prove. But the main point is it's the work, it's the production of lawyers, economists working in Brussels for 5 or 6 months. And the time frame they use to come to that outcome is not the Macron, Ursula von der Leyen time frame. You see what I mean? And so now that the EU Commission has a problem because they thought that by bowing to Trump in Aberdeen 6 weeks ago, they would close that chapter. And now with that fine, with that 3 billion euros fine, trade war is about to restart. You know what I mean? So it's as if all the concessions, the humiliating concessions they made a month ago in Scotland may be in vain if Trump retaliates and restarts an across the board messy trade war. One last point I'd like to make is in Aberdeen, the justification for the humiliating defeat of the Europeans is blah, 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 trade deficit, blah, blah, blah. And here there's a problem. We measure trade deficit not in a very scientific way. So it's all goods, and most services, but some IT, search engine, computer, telecom services are not well accounted in that measurement of what we call trade deficit. And if we bring back the Amazon and the Google and the Silicon Valley services, computer services, IT services, if you bring them back and take them properly into consideration, it is not true that America has a big budget deficit with Europe.
America's just talking about cars and things like that.
Yes, it's a fiction. And because they agreed to the fiction, because they bowed under pressure, the Europeans are about, after having lost their honor, they're about to lose a lot of money.
So what you're saying basically is because I know Trump always goes on about the fact that Americans buy a lot of European cars. Of course, Europe, especially Germany, makes a lot of cars, and nobody in Europe really wants to drive American cars. Is the problem? But if you add in Google and Amazon and all this, it's a completely different story. But Trump is now threatening Section 301, more tariffs, digital barriers, another trade war. Is that what we are actually looking towards in reality?
I think so. And I think to be honest with you, Europe will bow down once again because they don't have the strength or the will to fight. And it's exactly what happened. If you remember, it's exactly what happened in Canada 2 months ago. So the Canadians 2 months ago tried to slap a similar anti-competitive advantage, blah, 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 fine on Google. And Trump became very aggressive on Twitter and X and etc. And after 48 hours, the poor Canadians had to backpedal. So it may not take 48 hours, maybe it will take 2 weeks. But I think the poor European Commission will have, once again, to backpedal in shame because they're in no position to fight Trump because they're not. My argument is the following. These people, Macron, von der Leyen, Merz, they're not equipped intellectually to fight Trump because they are all neoliberals. They believe in waving the magic wand of free market economics. They believe in open borders, open tariffs. The Chinese and the Americans no longer believe in that. They believe in cold-blooded geo-economic warfare. So that's why the Europeans are losing at every corner.
So if they are going down this road of penalizing companies like Google and laying out these fines, is it because one side of the EU, the people who are laying out the fines, and the people who are the leaders of EU countries don't know what one or the other is doing? Or is it something deeper than that, more of a fracture between the US and the EU when it comes to tech and trade? And why would they why are they doing it if they know they're going to have to back down in the end?
Because, the EU bureaucracy is a little disorganized. It's a big, fat machine. And that probe into Google's practices started by very high-level government lawyers and government economists. And they came out, after 5-6 months, they came to that conclusion, fining an American company, Alphabet, Google's mother company, 3 billion euros. And she cannot, like a dictator, stop the process. So Ursula von der Leyen, even though she submitted fully to Trump at the Aberdeen summit 6 weeks ago, she couldn't just tell the government, the EU government, lawyers and economists, okay, stop the work you're doing on Google. That bureaucratic process, legal process, had to go to its fruition. The Americans are better organized. What I'm coming at is in the White House, Trump can call the Justice Secretary and order him to start a probe into, I don't know, a British company or Airbus or Mercedes-Benz, just like that, in just half an hour. In Europe, there's due process, a lot of due process, a lot of bureaucratic procedures. And so that's also why when you go to war, when the other party, when you go to economic war, like traditional war, if the other party is very well equipped, very well organized, aggressive, and you are like a medieval knight in a shining armor who takes his time and respects all the rules and regulations, you will lose the war.
So is it then just a, I mean, you say that they will lose the war. Is this just like a blip then in transatlantic ties? Or is it the start of some kind of long-term digital Cold War where you've got US dominance and then EU with their regulations? We've got about a minute left, Nick.
It's too late for a Cold War. America already won. And the reason why America already won is that to play the card of the Cold War, the EU would have to be cynical. They would have to play China against America in some circumstances, and in other circumstances, play America against China. They're not willing to do that. And because they're not willing to do that, they will lose, of course.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Meher Nicola Fursley, for joining us with your views on the situation. Always a pleasure. As Europe takes on big tech and America retaliates, the question isn't just who controls the platforms, but who sets the global rules. From cabinet reshuffles in London to algorithmic crackdowns in Brussels, Europe finds itself in a period of deep flux. And whether it's political ethics or platform economics, the battles ahead will test not just leadership, but the frameworks of accountability themselves. Thank you very much for watching this evening. This has been In Focus. Have a very good night.